I'm going to take myself off video, Drew.
Sounds good. Good afternoon, everyone. We're going to give it about a minute or two to let people come into the room, get their audio set up. I'll do a couple of welcomings throughout that time. Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us today. I'm going to give it about another 30 seconds just to let anyone else join us, and then we will get started. All right. Thank you for joining us over the lunch hour. My name is Drew Thomason. I'm with KEB out of Springfield here in Illinois. We are a neutral convener and facilitator for the state's workforce development system. One of the things we are helping is the development of a 4-year plan for the state's workforce development system. And that is what today's presentation is about. We want to make sure that you have a chance to ask all the questions that you have and get those answered. So there's a couple of ways you can interact throughout today. The first, you can use the webinar chat to drop your questions in there. There's also a Q&A pod that you can use to ask questions. And lastly, we'd love to hear your voice. If you want to have a chat or raise your questions that way, simply raise your hand, and Kirsten here, who is helping host and facilitate this webinar, will turn on your mic and you can ask your question that way. We anticipate this webinar taking about an hour and a half, although it could be a little bit less depending on the number of questions you have. All right. So Illinois has a workforce development system that strives to provide workers, employers, and individuals with all the support that they need to succeed. That means providing individuals with training and skills to navigate a successful career path, and it means helping employers find and retain those skilled workers. To ensure the efforts of the workforce development system are focused, cohesive, systematic, every 4 years, the state develops a strategic plan. Our purpose today is to discuss the concepts that are being explored for inclusion in the state plan. And most importantly, we want to hear from you. We want your feedback on those concepts that are being developed and what the state plan and the state workforce system can do to ensure your success. To ensure that everyone can participate in the discussion and it has kind of an equal footing here, we're going to start with an overview of the Workforce Innovation and Opportunities Act. You might hear me refer to that as WIOA. WIOA. That is the Workforce Innovation and Opportunities Act. We'll go over that law, that federal law in general, and also get into a little bit of how it is structured and carried out here in Illinois. We're going to then, after building that foundation, move into a review and discussion of specific items under development for the state plan. Before we really get into it, I'm going to pause and ask if anyone has any questions about our purpose today. All right. So what is WIOA? WIOA, or WIOA, is federal legislation enacted in 2014 that is designed to strengthen and improve the nation's public workforce system and help get Americans, including youth and those with significant barriers to employment, into high-quality jobs and careers, and help employers hire and retain those skilled workers. Real quick, before I move on, I do see that someone's hand is up. Dorothy Wolf, do you have a question? I think Kirsten might have turned on your mic.
She raised or she lowered her hand.
Okay,
They lowered
great.
their hand. Yep.
Nope, no, not a problem. We've all been there. Half the time on Zoom, I go to clap and I raise my hand and it just confuses everyone. So thank you. I'm just going to read that slide one more time. WIOA is a federal legislation that was enacted in 2014. It's designed to strengthen and improve our nation's public workforce system and help get Americans, including youth and those with significant barriers to employment, into high quality jobs and careers, and help employers hire and retain those skilled workers. WIOA strategically aligns core workforce development programs. WIOA fosters regional collaboration within states through local workforce areas. WIOA provides high-quality jobs and careers for job seekers. That could mean career planning, connection to training programs, basic adult education skills, and job placement services for those job seekers and individuals. And WIOA helps employers hire and retain skilled workers. So our American Job Centers under WIOA offer services for hiring and placement, local labor market information, and employee training. They also offer services for hiring and placement and other labor market information. They also provide information about local and federal resources that can assist with business decisions, again, including market and economic development opportunities. So I'm going to pause here for a question. Again, raise your hand, put it in the chat, put it in the Q&A. Have you used WIOA services before? See a couple yeses coming through. A couple of no's. No, no, no. All right.
We do have someone who raised their hand. Rhonda.
Yeah, hi, Rhonda. Were you raising your hand to say that you've used services, or were you wanting to speak?
Yes, we have referred clients to WIOA.
Great, thank you. So I'm seeing in the chat kind of mixes of yeses and nos, saying yes, some saying this is the first time that they have heard of it. So great, it's good to have a mix of everyone here with us today. So again, I'm going to kind of delve into the framework a little bit, and then we will discuss specifically the state plan. Although I do want to raise up this comment, this is great from Eva. We have employed using WEX and on-the-job training programs through WIOA and highly recommend them. That's fantastic. Thank you. So on your screen, you should be seeing kind of the way that we like to think about how the workforce development system here in Illinois works, right? So the framework is such that it is consistently and constantly feeding back on the work that is being done to help improve itself. So first of all, in the blue, we have the vision. It is the lens through which all of the workforce system can and should be viewed. And it is what influences everything else within the workforce development system here. Next, we have the yellow, or the strategy. So once we have that vision, we look to strategies that set priorities and objectives to achieve the vision for our workforce development system. Those strategies then develop or inform our policies, which you can see here in red. Policies are developed through inclusive efforts to set clear expectations, requirements, procedures for operationalizing those strategies. And then lastly, we have the orange, which is the operations. Operations are plans to implement those strategies and policies with real human and financial commitments. Those efforts are then maintained and adapted over time as they feed back into a new vision, new strategies, and new policies. So if we're thinking about the blue, the vision, starting at the top, the governor and the Illinois Workforce Innovation Board are integral in setting that vision for the system. The governor is responsible for setting the vision and the strategies for accomplishing that vision. That's why here you'll see the governor in blue with a yellow outline around that box. And then the Illinois Workforce Innovation Board is tasked with assisting the governor in setting the vision, hence why it's in blue, and with developing policies to support that vision, which is why you see it outlined in red. So the Illinois Workforce Innovation Board, or IWIB, as some people call it, consists of committees, work groups, and task force that each have a unique purpose, as you can see described on the slide. For the purposes of today, they are the policy setting organization of the workforce development system. I'll take a moment here to pause and just remind you that you will be getting a copy of this presentation emailed to you tomorrow. So if there's something on a slide that I don't read out loud or that you miss after I advance it, don't worry, you will be getting a copy of this presentation. So now we've gone from the vision to the policies, as well as the strategies. Let's talk about the operations side. There are interagency teams that have been created to focus on those operational issues of the workforce development system. All of these groups have representation on various state board committees, task force, and work groups. And then there's the local workforce boards and the Illinois Workforce Partnership here outlined in blue, because they also help inform and implement policies at the local level and visions at the local level. So that's just a real quick framework of how the workforce development system is envisioned to work here in Illinois. I'll pause real quick and ask if anyone has any questions regarding this background of WIOA, and also apologize because it seems that there are several people with leaf blowers outside of my office right now. I hope that doesn't impact the audio too much.
I can't hear anything, Drew, so I think you're good.
Great. All right. I'm not seeing any questions. So now let's move on to the state plan. So the Illinois Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act state plan provides a vision of the governor's integration of workforce, education, and economic development policies and programs for our state. It also serves as a federal compliance document as required by the U.S. Departments of Labor and Education under that federal WIOA law. So while it is a required document, Illinois likes to approach it from a different angle, in that this is setting out a vision for the next 4 years for our state and how we're going to accomplish that vision. The plan is roughly divided into two large sections. We're going to start with the strategic elements. So these strategic elements are the part of the plan that includes the analysis of the state's economic conditions, our workforce characteristics, an analysis of the workforce development activities, so a self-analysis of the system. These strategic elements also look at skills gaps that exist in order to make sure that the state is meeting employers' demands around what they need from employees, and that the state is using activities and strategies to meet those gaps. Then, based on all of that analysis, the state sets that vision and goals that will help achieve success in our workforce development system. So first, let's talk about the economic analysis. There is an interagency group of data individuals, economists, and other experts who perform these analyses. And so I'm going to kind of lay out for you some of our initial findings that have helped inform the rest of the draft plan. So Illinois has a somewhat higher unemployment rate than the rest of the nation, but it also has a higher labor force participation rate. In both geographies, the labor force participation rate remains lower in 2023, though, than it was in 2019. So as we all know, labor force participation plummeted in April of 2020 because of the pandemic, gradually started to recover through 2021. And by last year, that participation had almost returned to pre-pandemic levels and has been relatively stable throughout this year. And we are projecting it to be relatively stable going forward. That's at the statewide level, but within the state, unemployment actually varies pretty considerably from region to region and county to county. The region in Illinois with the highest unemployment rate is the northern state line, so the border between Illinois and Wisconsin. It has a not seasonally adjusted unemployment rate of about 6% compared to 4.5% statewide. And then there are 3 regions tied for the lowest unemployment rate at about 4.5%, so just under the statewide average. And that's northeastern, so that includes the Chicagoland area, southeastern, and then the southwestern parts of the state. But even within those regions, unemployment is not consistent. For example, the southern region has a 5.1% unemployment rate, but the rate is higher than 7% in specific counties, Alexander and Pulaski. So I'm going to pause there real quick. I do see someone has their hand up, so I want to give them a chance to ask a question before I dive into any more of this analysis. So Robert Frazier, do you have a question? While he's getting unmuted or typing, I'll answer to Craig's question in the chat. Craig asked, is there a graphic we are supposed to be seeing? No, this slide is the correct slide right now. It looks like Robert might have lowered his hand. So back to unemployment, in both Illinois and the nation at large, the group with the lowest unemployment rate is white women, and the group with the highest unemployment rate is African American men. In both Illinois and the nation, Hispanic workers, both men and women, have an unemployment rate between white workers and African American workers. I'm going to dive a little bit into something that's fairly technical, but I think it's fairly revealing about some of this economic analysis for folks. So Illinois has kind of divides our employers into various super sectors. And then they quantify those sectors as either leading, emerging, or maturing. And so let's talk through where those sectors land here in Illinois. So let's talk about our leading industries. Laborers in this, so the labor market, the number of individuals employed in these industries are more concentrated than the national average. That means per capita, we have more employees in these industries than the rest of the nation. And these are the industries that we are projecting to grow over the next 8 years. So transportation and warehousing is by far and away our biggest leading industry here in the state, and again, is expected to only grow over the next 8 years. Financial activities, so think of CPAs, or not CPAs, I'm sorry, but brokers, stock market, those kind of things. They're also projected to grow and we have a higher concentration than the rest of the national average. Manufacturing has been on an interesting path. During the pandemic, manufacturing took a big hit in Illinois, but when we factor out the impact of the pandemic, or take into consideration the pandemic and kind of factor in that to our calculations, manufacturing in Illinois is actually we're seeing an increase in the number of jobs, and we have a higher concentration of employees per capita here. A lot of those areas are kind of around clean energy. So that could be electric vehicle production, various industries to support electric vehicle production, such as batteries, battery manufacturing, and some other areas like that. Another area that we see as a leading industry is professional and business services. And then lastly, utilities. We also see these sectors on your screen now as emerging industries. So right now we have below the national average per capita of workers in these industries, but they're projected to grow in terms of the number of employees. And when we factor in those new employees, we could either meet that national average quotient or move above it. So these emerging industries could move into leading industries in the future. So that's healthcare and social assistance, retail, trade, ag, leisure and hospitality, government, and construction. As you can see here, construction is an interesting industry because we are projected to see an increase in the number of jobs available over the next 8 years. However, when we look at Illinois compared to the rest of the nation, we're significantly lagging in our concentration of construction jobs. And then lastly, maturing industries. So these are industries that have probably hit their peak in Illinois, at least over the next 8 years. They've had the most number of employees they're going to have, and will likely start to decline in terms of the number of jobs anticipated over the next 8 years. So for Illinois, that's wholesale trade, personal and other services, and education services, private and public. So if you see, it makes sense. We have a higher concentration of those jobs in Illinois than the rest of the state. And so while we're going to lose those number of jobs, while those number of jobs are going to go down over the next 8 years, projected to, we'll probably still have a higher concentration in Illinois than the rest of the country. Does anyone have any questions on any of those data points that I went over? Yeah, Karen Spence. And again, if you want to, you can raise your hand and come off mute. You can put your questions into the chat or the Q&A box. We will monitor all three. Okay, thank you, Karen. Karen said she will come back to her question. Let me pause here and ask you as a group a question. What I've just been talking about in terms of leading, emerging, and maturing industries are viewed through a statewide lens. As we talked about with unemployment rate, the economies of our state can vary greatly depending on the region, the county, and even from between cities within counties. Do these numbers and data points that I just went over resonate with you? Do you see something similar in your geographic area? Or is your geographic area different than the rest of the state? What are you seeing? What are you hearing?
We
Yeah,
have
Robert.
Robert. Mhm.
Definitely don't see those numbers. I'm in Springfield region, so obviously our numbers are nowhere near the Chicago. And that was one of my questions that I was going to ask is, as this data is being accumulated or dissected or whatever you want to call it, how is that done? And is it done by region? And who does this data checking and how they collect their information?
Yeah, those are all great questions. So let's start with where is this data coming from? So this is all data that is collected by the Illinois Department of Employment Security, as well as BLS National Long-Term Unemployment projections. So it's collected from those areas. And then the actual analysis is done by a team, an interagency team across the state agencies that are involved in WIOA. So they perform that analysis. And then to your other question about, and to the point that the state is not homogeneous and it is very different from one geographic region to another. Yes, there's further analysis that is done to break this out by economic development region. So Illinois has 10 economic development regions. The state then breaks down this data by those economic development regions and provides them to the local workforce areas who are also, so as the state is working on its plan, the region and local areas are also working on their own 4-year plan. So they take data that is similar to what you just saw, but that has been regionalized and use it when developing their plan.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yep. I think someone else has a question. Bernice?
Yes, hi. I have a question about kind of piggybacking off the numbers question, looking specifically at educational services.
Yeah.
I was just in a webinar about addressing the teacher shortages in our region, specifically in our district, which is a very large district, experiencing a shortage of not only teachers, but also paraprofessionals and bus drivers. So it seems like the pandemic really impacted those numbers. So it was kind of surprising to see that it's a maturing industry. So how do you feel like these numbers are going to, are they going to fluctuate? Are they going to change? And how can we expect to fill those gaps if we're saying that area is going to slow down as far as growth goes?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, I'm going to use that to piggyback on another point, is that why do we even do this analysis, right? I mean, it's great to know, but like other than informing the vision and the goals, like what other purpose does it perform? It helps us as a state to think about where to invest our funds, because we have a limited bucket of workforce dollars to spend on training and employment and re-employment. So where do we spend those funds, and how do we incentivize employment in various sectors? So I'm going to go back a slide, and then I'll come back to your question about education specifically. So, for example, one of the sectors that we look at is government. And that's good to know, but it's not going to be one where the workforce system necessarily incentivizes employment. But construction, that's definitely something we're going to want to incentivize. Here, when you're talking about education services, I think this projection represents that paraprofessional, bus driver, teacher shortage. This is also inclusive of private schools, but also colleges and other educational areas. So again, even these are what we term as kind of super sectors. So it doesn't necessarily get down into your specific question, but like bus drivers, I don't want to speak, I can't speak to what training they need, but if they need some kind of training, that's where the state could incentivize people to take those jobs by helping provide the training for that. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah.
Great. I'm going to go to, I see a couple of questions here. So Eva says that they're on the northern state line, very much light industrial. Yeah, so Eva asked a couple of questions. She's curious as to how the numbers will change. So they've seen an increase in medical and sustainable tech industries, but they do have a high concentration of light industrial, which would probably fall under manufacturing here, and wondering how those numbers will change. So I would say they're very much in flux. I don't have those regional data sets in front of me, so I can't speak specifically the full data sets. So I can't speak specifically to that, only that you might see a wash almost, right? So you'll see that some numbers will go down. Some sectors will go down and others will go up. So it is a region, when you look at it holistically, the number of jobs will remain the same. And that's been very true of the state. The number of actual jobs in the state has been very steady for the last 20 years. We really haven't grown the total number of jobs. It's been a shifting of where those jobs are. So that's probably going to be reflected in the region too. And then Eva also asked a question about education as well. So maturing, does that mean with regards to education services that we will have people staying longer at those jobs, or that educational services are leaving our area? So yes, could be both. Either way, when we look at maturing industries, as a state, we are going to net lose jobs in those industries. It could be different for your region or your local area, but as a state as a whole, we are projected to lose jobs in those areas. And then to Craig's point, so Craig says that IDES data is as of 2020. It's as of 2022. This is still preliminary data. We'd actually originally done some of these calculations based on the 2020 data, but it had obviously skewed results because of the pandemic. So this is kind of a one-time special calculation that we're doing for this plan to use preliminary 2022 data because we think that it does a better job of representing the current state of things as opposed to basing this projections on 2020 data. I hope that answers your question. All right, thanks all. This has been great questions, great discussion. So kind of recentering us, again, we're talking about the analysis that we're doing to create the state plan. Another area that we look at is skills gaps. So what's the gap between what individuals are trained in and what employers are seeking? So when we were doing this analysis, it was found that overall, here in Illinois, we have a gap between certificate earners, as well as those with associate's degrees, and the job openings that require those certificates and degrees, meaning there are more openings than potential employees, right? So I'm going to say that again. There are more job openings that require a certificate or associate's degree than there are earners here in Illinois. The opposite is true for four-year degrees or higher. So we are graduating more bachelor's, master's, and upper level degree earners than there are available jobs for those degree earners here in Illinois. Again, it's going to seem like I'm caveating all of our analysis, but there are exceptions. For example, software engineers. That is a four-year degree at least, and there is a sizable gap between the number of software engineers we as a state are graduating and the number of job openings. We as a state are not graduating enough software engineer positions or degree earners to fill available positions. So that was kind of a summary of some of the external analysis that we do in developing the state plan. But there's also some internal self-reflection of the workforce system itself. So the workforce system is analyzed in areas of capacity, its strengths, its weaknesses. And there are several efforts over the past 18 months to kind of examine the workforce development system, right? So we have looked at, there's been a commission, Governor's Commission on Workforce Equity and Access, a Good Jobs report, and some other reports that have looked at the system and have said, what are we doing well? What are we not doing well? And how can we improve? So we count those efforts in and of themselves as the strength of the system. It is a self-reflective system that is willing to make improvements based on learnings. Another strength is the ability to quickly address talent pipeline issues for employers. But then we are far from a perfect system. Some weaknesses are that the system can be confusing to navigate, both for individuals and employers. There's a lack of awareness among the public about what the workforce system has to offer. I think we've seen that already today, that today's the first some people are hearing about this system, and it is a large system here in Illinois. And we also realize that as a system, sometimes we can struggle to track individuals who are mobile and might move between different service delivery areas. So I want to pause here and ask you, if you've interacted with the workforce development system, what are some of your experiences? What worked well? What caused issues? And while you're reflecting on that, so Craig asked, regarding the skills gap, how are businesses engaged to gather data? I know our data team reached out to businesses to gather that information. I'm not sure the exact methodology that they use, but we can circle back with you on that. I'm just going to make a note. Yeah, again, Craig, I will follow up with our data team to get that. So if you have interacted with the workforce system, what are some of your experiences? What worked well? What caused issues? I know we have a number of people who have. Yeah, Eva, we would love to hear from you. You can poor turnaround time. Thanks, Craig. Eva, if you don't mind dropping your email in the chat, or you should be able, I believe you could do a private chat to either myself or Kirsten, and just drop your email and we'll connect with you. Craig, if it's all right, I'd like to follow up a poor turnaround time in providing the services you're looking for, or just reaching back out to you after you've reached out to them. Thanks, Eva. Communications and services. Yeah, thank you. Robert, I see your hand is up.
I can say that. I could say that. Hold on one second. We attempted to utilize some of the programs, but when we evaluated their request of information that they required and matching up with the skills of the applicant, it didn't jive. So we just opted out. Seemed that the system was a little more cumbersome that we were willing to participate in. A little evasive, but the level of experience wasn't there, and the quality of an applicant that we were looking to get from this sort of streamlined program was not efficient as far as when we vetted it.
Great, thank you. So what can I'm going to repeat that back to you just so I heard it correctly. So it was kind of twofold. The first is the system itself and its requirements, kind of like a overly burdensome in what it's asking of you to participate in it. And then secondly, it would be that even if you could, if we streamline that, what you're looking for in terms of employees wasn't matching with what was being offered. Then Craig has and this is, I think, reflected too in with individuals and job seekers only in a different manner, but the changing in funding requirements or county to county. So Will County employer, Cook County employee. So Will County is in its own local workforce development area. Cook County is in its own workforce well, Will County's in a separate workforce development area compared to Cook County. So and then Craig brings up how to securely transmit personal identification information. Yeah, Robert.
Yeah, I just lost connection. So yes, you're correct. Was the assessment of what we were going through was correct, but I lost connection there. I couldn't respond back to you.
Got it. Thanks. Laura's just reiterating that. Then Eva said that they greatly simplified their paperwork for employers, and workforce staff put it in the time to track the case, complete the paperwork, etc. Thank you. All right. Anyone else before we move on? We have any success stories out there? I'll move on, but if you, I know someone's already shared one about using WEX and on the job work experience and then on the job training to great result. Yeah. So on the job training with the justice impacted. Thanks, Craig. All right, if anyone thinks of anything else, feel free to throw it in the chat. I'm gonna, just for the sake of time, keep on moving. So we've done all of this analysis. We've looked at the external factors, the labor market information, projections about what jobs are going to be needed in the future, what jobs are going to have less demand on them, what are employers looking for, what is the workforce system doing well, what could we be doing better. We've done all of this analysis, and that all feeds into the setting of a vision and goals and strategies for the plan. So in May of this year, Governor Pritzker held a visioning session of Illinois Workforce Innovation Board members, state agency directors, employers, labor and community advocates, and other stakeholders in the workforce development system. So based on that visioning session, the input received there, the various studies and reports done over the past 18 months, and this analysis, the governor's office and the workforce board have come up with this vision. So Illinois' workforce system will meet employers, job seekers, and community members where they are, centering the customer experience in an interoperable, equitable, and accessible manner to ensure all customers achieve their goals. We will support employers by building diverse, quality career pathways and provide effective training, education, and economic opportunities for job seekers and communities to thrive. One point I want to make is you might hear us say customers a few times when talking through either the vision or the goals or strategies. And when we are talking about customers within the world of WIOA, there are two general customers. The first is going to be the individuals. So those could be job seekers or current employees or students. So single person customer. And then customer also means employers and businesses, because again, the whole thrust of WIOA is to train up individuals and then connect them with employers and businesses that need those skill sets. So when we say customers, we mean everyone. We mean individuals as well as employers. So that vision was set, and then as part of the discussion at that May visioning session, and again, further feedback and discussion, there have been 3 draft goals for the system. So the goals are designed to address the 3 components of the workforce system: the system itself, employers, and individuals. Those draft goals are: Illinois' workforce development system is an example of excellence in its approach to collaboration and customer service. Illinois' workforce development system will enhance employers' abilities to hire and retain skilled workers that meet their emerging needs. And lastly, Illinois' workforce development system will use customer-centered and data-informed practices to improve the quality of the job seeker experience in pursuing fulfilling career pathways in a manner that is equitable and accessible. I'll just pause there, ask for your initial reaction to the vision, those goals, what you think. Will these, if we meet these goals, will our workforce system in the state be improved in 4 years? Thanks, Robert. That's a great question, Craig. So Craig asked, how will these be measured? So part of the compliance piece of this document is measuring progress on goals. So I believe that that first one is going to be a little bit harder to quantify, because how do you quantify excellence? It'll likely be based on reviewing customer feedback surveys that we will use throughout the next 4 years. So just monitoring that to see if we are making a marked improvement on those survey results. The second one, yeah, the second one will again be going back to our super sector analysis and asking, are we improving those local quotants and addressing the leading, emerging, and maturing industries? So are we seeing an increase in the connection of employees or potential employees to employers? And that will also bear out in that third one. Again, are we seeing placement of participants in WIOA into jobs? That's an analysis that we're still developing, but again, it is something that is required, and these were written with the idea that we do have to measure them and report out. So in service to these goals, we've identified 11 strategies that will kind of underpin our commitment to engage and support all parts of the education, workforce, and economic development systems. So again, you can see the draft goal here. This is the goal that looks at improving the system itself. We have 5 strategies under it. So the first is that the system uses a customer-centered approach to service delivery. That is thinking about what would best serve the customer when designing a grant or a program, and then building that system or grant or program up, as opposed to what are the federal government asking for, what are the compliance requirements for this program, and building a program around that. So again, trying to build programs and service delivery in such a way that starts with the customer first. Secondly, the workforce system will center equity and access. Thirdly, the WIOA partners and other workforce and education systems in Illinois will enhance coordination and collaboration. Fourthly, job seekers and employers will have a broader awareness of the workforce development system. And lastly, the state enhances local service delivery through supporting frontline workers. We have 3 strategies under our draft goal number 2. So again, reminding you that draft goal number 2 is that the workforce development system will enhance employers' abilities to hire and retain skilled workers that meet their emerging needs. So our 3 strategies under this are that the workforce development system supports, informs, and enhances employers' talent strategies. Secondly, the various parts in the workforce development system leverage their business services to provide more holistic support to employers. And then last strategy under this goal is that the system will build out tools and practices that can help employers adopt a culture that promotes equity and accessibility. So these 3 strategies are based on what we hear from employers that are involved with the system, as well as those that aren't. Kind of been part of that analysis over the past 18 months, but I'm curious, again, I want to pause here and ask, will these strategies help accomplish this goal? Are there strategies that need to be changed, added, or removed to accomplish this goal? And also, as you're thinking about that, I want to let you know that under each of these strategies, there will be those actual activities that are commitments of human and financial resources to carry out these strategies to accomplish the goal. So these strategies are still trying to be somewhat overarching, and then our activities are where we really get into service delivery and commitment of resources. All right. We will move on to the strategies under our last goal. So that goal is the one that wants to ensure that individuals and job seekers are supported. We have 3 strategies here. First is that the system educates and supports job seekers regarding how to navigate the labor market. Secondly, the system interacts with job seekers in the places where they live and visit. And then lastly, the system uses a data-informed approach to reduce barriers to services for job seekers who have historically been marginalized. This takes us into the operationalization of those strategic elements, but I want to pause before we get into this again and make sure that no one has any questions. And if you do, please feel free to ask them. All right, so now we're going to go over the main elements of the state plan's operational elements, which, as you might guess, operationalize those strategic elements that we just reviewed. So first of all, we have implementation of the state's strategies. Those are the activities I was saying where we describe specific actions that will be taken and specific resources committed to accomplishing those strategies. This section also talks to the state operating systems and policies that will be used to support the implementation of the strategies. So that's labor market information systems, data systems, communication systems, case management systems, job banks, things like that. Then this section also encompasses the assessment and evaluation. So Craig, to your point, here we answer the question of how the system will continuously assess the performance outcomes of the system. What are our benchmarks? What do those reports look like? How the state will align and integrate data and data systems to enhance coordination in WIOA programs. And then lastly, we'll talk about addressing accessibility of the one-stop delivery system, both for individuals with disabilities and individuals who are English language learners. So this is where, I'm going to pause real quick. I see Robert's got a question. Robert? We cannot hear you, Robert. I saw you come off mute real quick, but then went right back on. I still can't.
He should
hear
be
you.
off mute.
Yeah,
We
maybe
can't
it's
hear you, Robert, but
all right, just for the sake of time, I'm going to keep moving forward. But Robert, if that starts working again, or if you just want to type your question in the chat, we'll address it there. So again, we're kind of in the midst as a state team of writing these activities. But just to give you a preview of some of the activities that are being discussed and expanded on are things like a virtual front door. So that, the law is written in such a way that a lot of the WIOA services are provided at a physical location. So we realize, especially a lesson learned from the pandemic, is that going to a government office isn't necessarily how people want to access services. So how can we provide those services in a way that is more akin with how people currently access other services in their life? Think of setting a doctor's appointment or virtual banking. How can we kind of look at what the private sector is doing and replicate that to provide an ease of service delivery for customers? Another activity we're looking at is setting a good job standard for training program and employers that the systems work with. We want to make sure that the dollars that we are spending through WIOA are going to employers and training programs that support employees. So maybe we set a good job standard to ensure that that happens. Again, under that, raising awareness of the workforce development system, maybe developing a marketing plan for this system. How do we get word out to employers and individuals about the services that the system offers? Create a better referral system for local areas. So there are 4 core programs and then 18 required programs under WIOA that are all trying to serve the same population, but they all have different entry methods, and they all might have different reporting requirements. How do we help them talk to each other better to refer customers to the program that meets their needs? I think this also speaks to, again, something that's been brought up several times today, is that the way the law is written and the way it is carried out is very regionalized and localized, and it is intended, it was done so because, as again we've talked about today, there are big differences between the needs and the economic realities and situations of different geographic areas here in the state. But we also recognize that employers might span beyond those local areas and regions. Maybe they straddle 2 or 3. And likewise, potential employees might live in one workforce area, but need to be connected with an employer in a different workforce area. So how do we make that process less burdensome and better serves everyone better? Another activity is utilizing apprenticeships to build talent pipelines, encourage sector-based partners so that all employers can thrive. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that more in depth here, because that's going to be really a main thrust of some of what we're looking at over the next 4 years. And then how can we as a state provide tools and practices for employers to support DEIA efforts in their workplaces? This is obviously something that is we're concentrating on in our state plan, but how do we support employers in their workforce or in their workplaces to implement those practices? I'm going to pause here, and I'm going to read a question in the comments box. So Karen, I'm just going to read this comment. So if you don't have access to that comment box, everyone has the opportunity to hear it. I'm a senior talent acquisition partner for Meyer Incorporated. We have stores throughout Illinois. As we have our stores partner with WorkNet, I get no interest in partnering. What other resources or partnerships are available for industries where there are frontline opportunities for job seekers to partner through the WIOA program? Karen, could you just provide a little bit of clarification? around what you mean that you get no interest in partnering. And again, if you raise your hand, Kirsten should be able to let you have the mic to speak if you want to. Otherwise, if you can just type it into the chat. All right, you should be able to unmute your mic now.
Oh God, I thought it was going crazy. I was like, but thank you. I appreciate that. So as I shared with you, I'm in talent acquisition for the corporate side, but all of our stores have individual. They are always encouraged to partner with their local Illinois WorkNet office to help, because we both have a need. We want to put job seekers to work and we want to fill our roles as well. We get a lot of turnover. But when I say, hey, look, reach out to your local WorkNet office, they only want to, they just don't want to participate. Either they don't want us to come in or there's nobody at the office. We want to partner with them, even if it's giving a skill, apprenticeships. I mean, it's retail. So it's not like anybody desires to be in retail, especially, during and post-COVID. So my question was like, how do we partner with the WIOA program through, like, where do we go through? Our Illinois WorkNet is the only option that I've heard of. Like, we don't have business representatives through the WIOA or through IDES. There's just those representatives that work for them. They just have no interest in partnering.
That's a good question. So each local area, so we have 22 local areas throughout the state. They each should have a business services team. And we can, if you don't mind sharing your email, or we can get that offline, but we can put you in contact with those business service teams. And they would be a great bridge between local stores and the workforce system. I also know that, I saw that there are some regional managers on here too, and they can, of various programs, they'd be happy to connect with you too. So if you want to either share your email with me or put it in the chat, I'm sure we can connect those local stores with the business service teams.
Yeah, if you could send me their, the list, because in the Western region, we cross across 4 states of the 6-state footprint, which is Wisconsin, Illinois. I have 8 stores in Indiana and 2 stores in the Upper Peninsula. And in Wisconsin, they have the same kind of similar, and their business representatives partner really well with our stores. So I am regionally, but because of the individual stores and the zones that they represent, those business representatives, it's always best if they communicate and partner with the individual on a local level.
Yeah.
And so if you could, I don't know, partner me with someone to give me that list, I can maybe put together a call with, those stores that, that are with it throughout Illinois, and those business representatives to at least create an introduction. And then every store has different challenges, even if they're only a block away, so that's something that I would be interested in learning more about, how we can partner with the WIOA, because again, it's retail. Nobody says, hey, I want to work at a Meijer, but there are so many benefits to working with a lot of frontline industries, especially now. It's just we get a lot of turnover, and it would be nice to have that direct relationship versus only going into an Illinois WorkNet office.
Yeah. So we will definitely connect you. Two things, or one thing, and then I want to let Todd Lowry speak because he has his hand up. But if you scroll back through the chat, I think we've got some people already reaching out to you to connect. But we will, thank you, Karen. We will put you in touch with some of those business service teams. Todd?
Anyone and everyone, please feel free.
Will do.
Hi, Karen. My name's Todd Lowry, and I was going to put me in video. I want to let you know that I'm the State Business Services Manager for IDES. So I have 5 regional managers that all are part of business service teams throughout the state. So if I have your information, we could certainly reach out to you, and then we can set up times, because those business service teams that several people have referred to on there, we're all a participant on that. That's the partnering aspect of having a business service team. And if you If you want to make that initial contact with one of my staff, that's great, but any staff on that team would be helpful. And then they can basically do an analysis of what your hiring pain points are, and then maybe we can put together a plan for each of those areas. And as Drew has mentioned a couple times, each area presents a different set of dynamics. So you really have to get into a planning mode that tackles that. And on top of that, we do house the labor market information, and we can set up a meeting and do the analysis based on informative data as well for each of those areas. Sometimes we can get right down to the county, such as commuting patterns for folks. You might want to know that when you're making your decisions or doing your marketing to try and attract new talent. So I'd be more than happy to have a conversation with you. And if you're representing a large area such as what you mentioned, then maybe we can get you some individual attention in each of those areas.
Thanks, Todd. I would just like to say that I think that this specific discussion kind of goes back to raising that broader awareness of the workforce system that we want to think about over the next 4 years and put into this plan. Is how do we connect employers with the services that they need? Because it sounds like those local Myers stores just have not had, going back to one of the weaknesses, it can be a confusing system to navigate. So through no fault of their own, just haven't been talking to the right people. But if we can raise that awareness of the right people to talk to, I think we can really work together and help everyone. So that's fantastic. Thanks all. All right. I'm going to move on, and I want to, since this session was billed again as employer, kind of focusing on employers and employers' needs. We talked a little bit more about labor market information and kind of the sectors that are growing compared to maybe some of our other webinars. But I also want to talk to you about some of the draft activities, elaborate on some of these that we're looking at, just to kind of lay a framework and let you know what might be coming kind of down the road. So we say industry sector partnerships. That's something we want to discuss more or work at more with employers. So at a very basic level, these partnerships exist to better serve you, employers. Those needs that they work to address are kind of basic. The need to easily identify and deploy talented individuals on an ongoing basis. Workforce solutions that apply directly to employers' needs. Workforce partners that understand the problems specific to your industry. And the need of results through a solution that doesn't overtax kind of your already stretched schedules. So we have industry sector partnerships, and then something that we're going to be working on again is something that is done by the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, and that is Talent Pipeline Management, TPM. It's very much a demand-driven system. Where if you think of a business, customers or employers are kind of positioned as the end customer. So in this first illustration, you can see going from the raw material all the way through the supplier, manufacturer, distributor, retailer to the end customer. We want to take that approach with providing workforce development system services to employers. So how can the workforce development system kind of take that supply chain management approach, that demand-driven system approach to serving employers? And then this just, I think, serves to illustrate that a little bit more, is that the system really lives on the workforce development system really lives on that left-hand side of this chart. It's helping with career awareness, exploration, preparation. And then once those potential employees are kind of skilled up and ready to enter the workforce, it's connecting them with employers. So I think what you'll see over the next 4 years and what you'll see in this plan is an effort to be more demand driven and make our service delivery be more in line with what the private sector uses in terms of delivering services. So I just have 2 more slides, and then I'll pause again for any last questions, and we'll get you on your way today. So again, there's a question about ensuring accessibility. What does that look like? So while there are specific sections throughout the state plan that require addressing accessibility, Governor Pritzker has put a real focus on ensuring accessibility and equity in the system as a whole. And learnings from the Governor's Commission on Workforce Equity and Access are incorporated throughout this entire plan. So you see some of the actions that will be taken to ensure accessibility. So we're looking at doing an assessment of service delivery throughout the state. How accessible is that? What changes do we need to make it more customer and human centered? When we are certifying those one-stop centers, those 22 physical locations throughout the state, how can we use that process to ensure accessibility? And then providing professional development and technical assistance to local areas. So we have next steps. So starting next Monday and running through November, we are doing in-person listening sessions throughout the state. There's going to be one in every economic development region. Those presentations will be very similar to what you saw today. It's a very similar presentation and time for feedback and reflection by individuals. You are welcome to attend. We would also ask that if you can attend, to spread the word to your colleagues, whether they are in your organization or other organizations or local chambers of commerce. Please reach out and let people know that these are happening, and we would love to hear from them. Kirsten put the link to the registration page into the chat. So please take time to either register yourself or pass along those the word about those happening. We will finish drafting the plan, which includes incorporating feedback from today and from all of our listening sessions into our draft plan. That will be finished sometime in December. Then in January, that draft plan will be published on the web for a public comment period of 30 days. That is your chance to download the plan, read it, see, again, if it is matching your needs and the reality that you live every day, provide comments where it is and where it's not. And then we as a state team will again incorporate those comments and suggestions into the state plan, making any changes that are needed. And then finally, we will submit it to the U.S. Department of Labor in March of 2024. And the plan officially goes into effect on July 1 of 2024. So with that, I will pause and ask if there are any other questions for me today. Any other questions about the workforce system or the role of this plan, or how what the state can do to support you in your efforts? And while you think about that, Eva, I'm going to go back to, is this the section that you were asking about? I think it is, just by the logistics. Kirsten, if you could see that comment real quick while I answer this question. So this is yes to your questions, Eva. This is intended to, the workforce system works. WIOA envisions working with our state education agencies, which includes our State Board of Ed, so that's K-12, as well as once an individual becomes eligible in the workforce. So we envision this kind of working through all of those individuals. It seems like we might be getting an error with the registration page. If that's not fixed before we get off today, we will include information tomorrow when we distribute the presentation to folks.
Yeah, I see that some people are registering and some people aren't. It may be, if you're in your office, it may be government Wi-Fi blocking our registration. Typically we don't have that issue, but it potentially could be. So if we do, we'll get that worked out and then send the link tomorrow.
Yeah, thanks, Kirsten. Yeah, we'll send this. We'll make sure to include the link. We'll make sure to include the link in the email. So if you are getting an error, maybe you can try it on a different device than what you're on now. And if you are running into issues and you do want to register and it's not, great point, Craig. If you are getting an error, just let us know which one you want to attend and we will get you registered. You get the error after you hit submit, huh?
Well,
Melissa?
I'm on the back end of the form and I'm seeing everyone's submissions coming through.
Well, it
So
seems
they are going through. I just don't know why you're getting the error afterwards.
So you are seeing people registering.
Correct.
Yeah, maybe it's Kirsten, maybe it's like a redirect or something, but I'm getting that same error. And so you're saying that people's registrations are going through, it's just not that it's after they hit submit, even though they have this error, it's not going through.
Yeah, they are going through. So like, yes, Pamela just asked if their registration went through. Yes, it did. Caroline, yes, it did.
Okay, great. So we will work to get whatever that is fixed. So when you do share it out, we don't have the same error, but rest assured that if you hit submit and you got through to that 500 internal server error page, that it did get submitted.
Yeah, Caroline, you registered 3 times, but no big deal.
And
that's
also,
our fault. So
the other thing is we are not requiring registration for these events. It will help us prepare for these events and know what we like, kind of who's going to be attending, and we might customize our presentation a little bit. But if you just want to share those dates and times too with folks, the more voices we can hear from, I think the better our plan will be. And the more rounded out it will be. So we want to make sure that as many people have the chance to be heard as possible. All right. Well, again, please let me know if anyone has any more information. I'm also, and we'll put this in the email tomorrow too. I'm going to drop my email into the chat. I just sent it only to Kirsten. She already has it. I'm going to put my email into the chat so that way everyone has that. Kirsten, can you answer that question? Kathy asked, after they register, will they get a confirmation for the event with the specific location that they registered for?
Yes, an email confirmation will be sent to your email address above this form. I apologize. My coworker is who created this, but yes, it does say that you will receive a confirmation email. I'm not sure if it will say specifically the location, but it should, because it'll tell you which ones you selected, which ones you check.
And again, this is a case, we will use you as a little bit of our alpha or beta testing. If you do not receive an email confirming that, I'd say within the next 48 hours, please reach out to us so we can investigate what might be happening there.
Yeah, if you do not receive an email, please contact this person, which was it's actually, his email is at the bottom of that form. So if you just go to the link on the form, it's at the bottom of the form, and his name is Antonio Gomez.
All right. Thank you all for your participation today. Again, it looks like in the very least with these events, your information is being logged on the back end. So it is there, and we will make sure that you get email reminders about the events, dates, times, locations that you are registered for. I put my email into the chat as well. So if you have any questions about the state plan or WIOA specifically, please reach out to me. Thank you all and have a great afternoon.